Good morning. Thank you all for joining us this morning. We are really excited today about our webinar on financial stacking. This is a topic that comes up over and over again as we meet with people across the region on how to develop housing. And quite frankly, these concepts can be used for a lot of other economic development projects as well. So we are super excited to have our guest today. So we will hear from Adam Vaal first. He is from Multifamily Finance Consulting. Adam has led the financing on over $500 million in project costs, as well as closed on over 2,500 units. Adam takes the lead on underwriting, financial modeling, financing, and investor calls after the project has been successfully awarded, if affordable, or clear to pursue if market rate. So he's done a lot of underwriting. He's going to be a really interesting speaker this morning. He has previously worked for a national multifamily developer in the finance development and national low-income housing tax credit syndicator. In the underwriting department, he loves the new challenge of joining a small dedicated team and being more involved in the project from start to finish. So he's doing some work in that. We're super excited. And Adam, if you have any words of wisdom on the new draft QAP, please feel free to add those as well. And then we have my longtime friend, Heather Presley-Cowen from Capital Stacker. She and I knew each other from back in the day when we were redevelopment directors. And she specializes in working with government, community, and business leaders to design, customize, homegrown solutions to address local housing and community development needs. Heather brings more than 25 years of housing and economic development related experience to communities seeking to grow and thrive in today's tough economic environment. After nearly 2 decades of working with Indiana's second largest city of Fort Wayne, I will say it, and it's as its senior executive responsible for directing, developing, and planning the overall housing and neighborhood development strategies. She started her company, Capital Stacking. And we're super excited to have her with us this morning as well. I think you guys are going to really enjoy this. Again, please, for those of you who are familiar with the process, please feel free to put questions in the chat. I will hold questions until they ask for questions, unless I think it's particularly relevant, and then I may break in. But please take this opportunity to question these experts on this field. This will be really exciting, I think. And Heather, I'm going to let you take it away technology-wise. I think you guys decided that Adam was up first.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Excited to do this. This is a interesting time in the affordable and market rate world as far as financial stacking. And some of the reasons are there's just various factors that we've seen in the last several years drive kind of the need for more nuance in how we stack the capital, how we underwrite deals, how we make these things work. I mean, at the end of the day, the municipalities, the developers, everybody involved wants to make sure we're building housing. There's a shortage, a massive shortage in affordable housing. There's always a need for market rate housing. So just various factors that everybody needs to come together, probably more than ever, to make these things come to fruition. You want me to get moving on those pieces here? Yeah, here's my first slide. Excuse me for my lack of PowerPoint skills. I haven't done that in a while. So I call this part the finance funnel. And as you can tell with the funnel, we're going to drop in various factors into the top and see if it spits out a deal that we think might progress to the next stage. There's a lot of upfront work a developer has to do before we even start talking to cities to see if we have a deal that is viable. So it's kind of a balancing act to say how much upfront human capital and dollar capital can get put in, and then we move it down to this red funnel, and then that's where we're going to start talking to you guys at your level to make these things work. We can go back there if you don't mind on the slide. Thank you. So some of those factors I was talking about that's making things a challenge right now is there's rising costs with construction everywhere. If you've looked at building a home, putting in sidewalks, putting anything into lumber, costs have just gone crazy since, it's easy to blame. We just look at COVID as a turning point, but that's really when things started just rising at a rate that's hard to keep up with, and it's hard to price out for these general contractors. So the bid windows are shorter. They're only going to give you 30 days instead of maybe 90 in the past. So that makes everything a little more hectic there. Not only have costs gone up with those hard costs, the cost for land's gone up. You've probably seen your home values rise recently. Land's going to be the same way. Not only that, these affordable deals are going to rely on tax credit equity. The government is going to say, hey, we're not the best at developing affordable housing. We know people that are in those local municipalities know what's going on and what the need is there the most. So we're going to provide a tax credit to companies that invest into those local communities. Well, when tax rates went down 4 or 5 years ago, then it doesn't look as good to invest in those tax credits because there's other options out there. So the pricing of these tax credits has dropped significantly. 10 years ago, we were looking at maybe 94, 95 cents on the dollar for the tax credits. Now we might be looking at 88 cents. And I can explain a little more what that means in the next slides. But so those are challenges. But the rents for affordable projects are going to be based on AMI, or area median income. And as people might know out there, income has not been rising at the same rate as just inflation, these hard costs, land costs. So it becomes a little bit of a struggle to say, okay, if you can't get rents high enough to make a deal work, but your expenses have increased, what are we going to do? And that's really the genesis, I think, of what I'm going to be talking about, is how to make this work. How can we lean on you guys that are watching to really partner up here and work as a team to provide this housing that everybody listening here wants to do. That's our end game. So real quick, go through these slides. Big 4 factors that I see at the beginning of these funnels, and I kind of touched on all these a little bit. Net max rents. When you're talking about AMIs and affordable projects, you're going to be talking about what can you actually charge, what for rent, the asking rent, they call it. And it's going to vary in markets. It's going to be based on the market study that people are probably familiar with. And you can only ask for the rents on what's the demand. Demand in Indianapolis is going to be different than Pulaski County. That's just the way it is, and everybody knows. So you have to be selective on, hey, we know we're going to need a certain level of rent to make this thing work. So a lot of developers are really picking and choosing where they're going to try to build the next project based on what the rents are. Now, if there's a huge demand in one area, but the rents haven't caught up, we can still make a deal work, but we will have to rely on these partners, municipalities a little more. And that's what I talk about with the soft funding. So, okay, so now we have that in place. We kind of figured out what our rents are. The next step, we'll say, let's talk to some cities, see if there's a land bank available. How can we find affordable land? We're not going to try to build a affordable project on the corner of Main Street and 5th. It's just not going to work. They're going to be asking for $4 million and try to build a tower there. We're not going to do that. And likewise with acquisitions, when you buy an existing property that needs work, it needs rehabilitation, you just have to get pricing per unit in a level to where the rest of the economics work out. Market rate's a little different in that term because you don't have to have, just going back up there, you don't have to have there's no set rents, there's no net max. You can certainly charge $10,000 a unit. You might not fill those units, but you can charge whatever you want to make it pencil out. The most important thing on market rate deals is the investor is not the federal tax credit system. The investor is going to be some other third party that really, at the end of the day, just wants to get their rate of return to a level that, hey, they can put money in, they get some money out, wash their hands, and it's done. You're talking about chess versus checkers. And Heather would opine on this more later. Market rate is a much easier process. Not saying it's not difficult, it's much easier. The federal government, anytime they're not involved, of course, it's going to be easier. There's less red tape. So affordable projects are a longer time period and definitely more difficult to do. Moving down to the next part of the funnel. So we're looking good on rents, we're looking good on land price. Now let's start bidding this thing out to GCs, the general contractors, and see what is actually going to cost to build in this area. Labor is different throughout the state, believe it or not, especially in different regions. And what we found, in working with several developers over the last couple of years, we really try to get a new construction project to be fully built for under $160,000 a door. Now think about that. You might think that's a high number because, hey, you can maybe build a full house for 4 bedrooms for, I don't know, $250,000, $300,000, depending on location. So these are just only affordable units. There may be 600, 700 square feet. Yes, that's the case, but this number, the 160, is going to count landscaping, common areas, any amenities. Affordable housing is getting a lot more amenities than it used to, and it should. And it's not just going to be, there's refrigerators. I don't know if you've been in one. They're really nice. I mean, I would absolutely live in one of the newer ones. There might be a pool. There's going to be a dog park. All those things are included in this cost per unit. Rehab, as we talked about earlier, you don't have to build the frame. Everything's in place. You're just going to fix the outside, fix the inside, new carpet, etc. And we try to get that number down to under $40,000 a door. Indiana's QAP says you have to spend $35,000. So you can see there's a little window there already. Not a lot of wiggle room to fit that in. So there's a little bit of jockeying going on. You have to have it over 35. You have to have it really under 40, maybe 45, depending on the help from the municipalities to make these deals work. So really already at this point trying to fit it into a tight window. And then next, and something that probably has the most variable we can work with, is the financing terms. We're going to work with several lenders. We go out to RFP and request for proposal to maybe 10 equity providers, 10 lenders, perm lenders, construction lenders, and we have to get the best prices. It just comes down to, at the end of the day, you need the lowest rate. You need interest only for sure during construction, flexibility on the perm repayments, etc. So those are really important terms. What I want to do in this process is really harp on the soft funding, because that's where everybody here can help. And I will touch on that later. Next slide, please. So we got a deal that we think might work. So now it gets exciting. Developers are stirring a little bit, getting in a little earlier in the morning, say, hey, we think we can move forward. So let's try to figure out what's it going to cost to operate this thing, the operating expenses. As I mentioned earlier, those have gone up, some for good reasons. Payroll is a big thing that's gone up. That's just been lagging before. It takes the same or not, if not more skill to be a maintenance tech and in the office of the management for an affordable project than it is for a market rate project. So we got to get those things down. Insurance has gone through the roof, as everybody's probably seen in other aspects of their life. Utilities, those haven't gone down. Repairs and maintenance, any kind of cost that it's been needing just to run the day-to-day, as with general inflation, just paper, printing, anything like that has gone up recently. So now operating expenses are taking a bigger chunk away from the income. We want to see for a deal to work, for the most part, no more than 35% of your income can be used up by the operating expenses on any given year. And if you have thoughts about that number, it's because you got to pay back the permanent debt on that. That's the permanent debt's a big chunk of this. Costs money to take the loan out and then pay it back, probably more so than the operating expenses. Now we're going to move down to the next section, the soft costs. We talked about what it costs to build and go vertical, is what they call it in the industry. So now, what does it cost for market study, appraisal, property taxes, builder's risk insurance, environmental reports, all these other things? Those have to be paid out. We want to get those controllable. We want to get those locked down, remove as many variables as possible. And once we get a good idea of soft costs, we can move on from there to the local costs. Local costs are another big piece that you guys are involved in as well. What does it cost to get permits? And what does it cost for taxes? If you don't know right now in your area, the developer is going to ask you, and the developer is going to need to know. What's nice about these numbers and why it's lower on the finance funnel, we can speak with you guys, again, talking about the synergy. We can make the deals work with help there. Permitting costs might be set at one thing, but we can say, hey, as you can see, we'll show you the numbers. We can't pay $500,000 in permitting and make this thing pencil out. Could you work with us on that? Taxes are a huge part of that conversation. If taxes are at a market rate level, it's hard to make these deals work nowadays, going back to what we talked about earlier. So developers are really going to work with you guys there, probably push on that front, to be honest, because we just know it's one of the areas that can be adjusted. It's hard for you. I know you guys don't want to adjust the taxes. I mean, the point of all these projects, if you get tenants to move in, especially from out of the area they are, closer to their work, they have more disposable income. They're going to increase your taxes through other means. They're going to spend. They're going to be better pillars of the community with stable housing, and it's just going to compound itself generation after generation. So don't feel like you're losing out. You might lose out on taxes right away on the project, but in the long term, the data shows it's not the case. And then finally, this is kind of the nerdy stuff, so I won't spend too much time. Key performance indicators. That's just something that at the very end, the developer is going to make sure everything's in line with deals that we've seen be successful. And if we're finding metrics aren't quite working out, we might have to rethink it. Next slide, please. All right. So this is an example of pretty much everything I've talked about already. This is a deal that I've worked on, and it's in a small community. I crossed out the name because I don't know if there's any obligations there to withhold that information, but I did. This is what it's going to look like. The developer is going to send to you and say, these are the total sources of funds. This is the capital stack of this project. It's a $9.3 million project, and this is how it's going to look out. We're only think we can get 84 cents on the dollar here. Again, talking about this, maybe it used to be 90 cents. Taking a hit there. General contribution can be a different number, but the minimum is 100. That's from the Indiana QAP. And then actually might be $1, but we put 100 there. You start talking about the permanent funding. This project didn't need an actual permanent loan, but it did need some help to get across the finish line. IHCDA development funds, very common in the state. Recommend getting familiar with it. That's basically acting as a permanent loan, but with below market terms and more favorable terms. Soft financing, this is where you guys step in. We need the most help. This project needed a below market cash flow loan. So you're not paying, you don't have to pay it every month. You pay it when the project provides enough cash flow to spit back out that money. It will be repaid. We just can't say, hey, we know exactly when. And counties are fine with that. Cities are fine with that. They understand this part of the puzzle. And then at the end, that's all that wasn't quite enough. So the developer is going to say, well, we can reduce some of our fees for building this, and we'll put it into this sources and uses to make the project work. So the thing I want to really talk about here is this cash flow loan. Critical piece to make these deals pencil out. Just everybody has to be on board to make it work out. This cash flow loan was $350,000. There's no cap to that. There's no minimum. Sometimes you just need 100,000. Maybe the county can provide $1 million. It's whatever the benefit that the city or county sees to make the deal work. And and don't work with a developer that isn't telling you the truth. On this project, we needed this much, and that's what we got. If you can tell, ask for their finances, ask for the numbers, get familiar with what you're looking at, because there's just no reason not to be on the same page here. I've seen deals die by just lack of trust, really. People think, oh, the developer is just getting filthy rich over here on this deal. Why do I have to put in this money? Well, we can show you, if you work with a good developer, they can show you, hey, we're making this, it costs this. This is what you're going to get in advance. Next slide, please. And this is my last slide, and then I think Heather's going to take over, and then we'll get together for we'll kind of spitball off each other, I think, to finish up and open up for any questions. This is going to be standard on any financial model or pro forma that you will see from the developer. This is called an NOI page, net operating income. So this project, just look at year 2027, for example. This project is expected to bring in $276,000 of rents. And then you're going to take out vacancy. There's going to be some other income, late fees. You might have pet fees. It depends how your washer dryer is set up. Just any other income, application fees, standard things in any rental structure, really. It gets you to your effective gross income. So if you can think back to the finance funnel, once we get the rents set up, now we're to the point we're looking at expenses. Expenses are standard. You're going to have the property management fee, administration, utilities, salaries, benefits, operating. But I want to really talk about the taxes. So this is an important part here. This project was only allowed to move forward because the county said, we understand the taxes are too much of a burden, so we're going to put something together called a pilot. It's a payment in lieu of taxes. It's once you hear it out loud, you're like, that's exactly what it is. This developer and the county came together to say, we can't pay the $350,000 a year in taxes. That's going to escalate as the property tax grows. But what we can do, if you're on board with this, is we'll set a payment of $5,000 for the affordability period, which is 15 years. I'm only showing 10 because the screen's small. If we pay that $5,000 for 15 years and it doesn't escalate, and then at the end of that 15 years, then we'll be reassessed and start paying regular property taxes. It's a win-win. These units of affordability come into your market that you need. You told us you need it. We can build a project. You're still going to get a little bit of taxes. Sometimes it's easier to get approved if there is some taxes flowing in. And then if everybody comes together there and makes this pilot agreement, this deal works, everything is good to go. Pilots are one of the quickest ways to make sure a project pencils out in your community. There's other areas called tax abatement where it just literally wipes out the taxes for the 15 years. That's great, might be even better. But pilots are a very popular process right now. That is, I think that's where I will leave off. If there's any questions right now, and if not, I will pass it over to Heather.
Okay, we don't have any questions at the moment, but thank you. Heather, you're good to go.
All right. Well, so what I love about the ability to tag team with Adam is that, we're really talking about one thing here, and that's housing. And forever, a big traditional tool, one, we talked about housing as affordable housing, as in big A affordable, meaning a tax credit deal requires certain incomes, as Adam mentioned. He mentioned AMI, area median income, as a pre-qualification for someone's ability to live in that home. So housing that's constructed has these tax credits tied to it, but they also have certain requirements around amenities and placement, and it's very competitive. And, as Lisa mentioned, I would say back in the days when I was looking at developers like Adam and Sullivan Development and inviting them to come into Fort Wayne, I got to look at those pro formas and then decide how much money should we put in and right sizing those deals. What's interesting is that was perceived at that time in many ways to be that, as in low income housing tax credits, were about the only tool that I could think of that really had the ability to produce a high number of units in our community. And so we really didn't look at anything else for many years. The housing crisis has really shown us a lot, but knowing that things are changing and job situations are changing, millennials are entering the mortgage and the housing market, there's a lot of other tools that communities can now look at. And so I'm going to talk about some of the other traditional tools and then walk through a methodology that communities that I get to work with use to deploy their own housing strategies, which may include low income housing tax credits, but also really focus on workforce housing and looking at the broader market span. So I'll go through those, and Adam, jump in at any point. So first of all, you just heard. Now, the tough decision that most communities face is you've got this great developer with a high quality product, an excellent background in getting tax credits and managing those properties, being a great partner to the community. And they come to you and they want today TIF. Let's say they want some tax increment financing or they want a tax abatement. Well, that decision would, again, float to my office. But if you're like most communities, you don't have someone who is a housing strategist who's doing that work on your behalf in your community. And in my case, I had 16 staff members doing all kinds of parts in the construction and financing and administration work. We were looking at those things, but most communities that I talk to nowadays, they don't have that kind of a staff. They don't have a team working with them like that. So what oftentimes happens is the developers asking for money, and we look at all of the different tools that we might have. I call it a public financing orchestra. Interestingly, what I normally see is we've got a French horn called tax abatement or TIF, and that's all I hear is the French horn when we come in. But in reality, local governments have a lot of different tools, and you just heard Adam walk through all the different reasons why an impact fee is only going to widen the gap for an affordable housing development, for instance. But that yet tax credits, if we sign off on a project that's coming into the community, can be a really great tool that doesn't cost us really anything, and potentially could bring more income tax, more real estate tax to the community. So I'm just going to walk through these really quickly before we kind of get into the mechanics of some projects. We'll talk about some examples of some tools that are lesser known tools. But again, I consider it an orchestra, And the point being that if the local government's going to invest in these kinds of projects, and I do consider it an investment, you should expect a return on your investment. Adam just walked through exactly how a developer sees this thing. They look at it from the standpoint of feasibility, meaning a reasonable profit, reasonable construction costs, reasonable operating costs. And for local governments, that's really, the responsibility local governments have as well when they're entertaining an Adam coming into the community. So understanding what tools you have available and how you want to use those tools can be a really great way to smooth out the conversations when a developer comes through the door into your community. Now, I'm going to talk in a few minutes. If you don't have developers coming, like most communities, there are a few things you can do there as well. So just really quickly, TIF, tax increment financing, it was for many years very controversial. It may still be controversial in some communities. But there is a tool in Indiana, residential TIF, that's great for now single family detached housing. And then, of course, we've always pretty much known about commercial TIF. But what I've found is a lot of government leaders come wanting to understand what are these tools that we have in our toolkit. And these are the two basic ones you're probably talking about. So just really quickly, tax abatement and TIF, when we think about capital stacking from the government perspective, these are two great tools in your toolkit, but they're very different tools. And I'm starting to hear more communities, at least a couple of bigger cities, talking about tax abatement as a great tool. And I want to explain when each of these tools should be used. So like a good, a conductor, we want to use the right instrument at the right time. So tax increment financing, we're capturing and redirecting incremental property tax for development projects in a designated area. So we set up that TIF district in an area that we think is right for housing development. And that's key because obviously we want to make sure that that is set in a place that's well connected, high quality of life, quality of place. Tax abatement, on the other hand, is a very different tool. And they're very different in terms of how much money they actually can provide to a development deal. But we're basically shutting off the taxes for a period of time, either in the entire time or in a reduced rate over time. And the idea is that we're helping that project through, again, providing some form of subsidy to them. The economic impacts of TIF, and I'm going to show you one that was done for a region, can be very substantial. In fact, in terms of stimulating economic development, that's what TIF's really all about. So we're attracting a private developer to do what they do best. It also helps with the banks to be able to do what they do best. We can revitalize neighborhoods with it. We can actually grow property values. And when we think about how taxes actually work, if we've got one tax bill, it's no different than my grocery bill. If that bill stays the same, but I've got more ways of paying for it, typically you're pulling less from each of those pots that you might have been paying out of. Well, as we grow those property taxes, if the tax bill stays the same, then our residents actually pay less over time, in theory. And so when we look at tax abatement, that's typically where we're trying to attract businesses. And we're talking in housing now a lot more about mixed income and mixed use deals. And so we think about, tax abatement could be critical for getting the type of businesses we need in the downtown, for instance, attracted to a housing development area. It helps us to target developments. We create, areas where we want to economic development target areas where we want tax abatement to be implemented. But again, very similar kind of in how we're establishing a geographic area, maybe that we want to target, but different ways that different partners that maybe we're bringing to the table. Typically, you're going to use TIF when you want to promote economic development, neighborhood revitalization, workforce housing. That is the primary tool that I'll be talking about when you start to look at doing your own projects in communities. Tax abatement, on the other hand, when you want to attract those businesses. And so they really work nicely as part of your orchestra, but very different. So while they can have positive impacts, and we all know this, like I said, they've been controversial, we really need to think through those tools. And so when you're thinking about residential TIF, using residential TIF, which is different than commercial TIF, we're thinking about, can we increase our housing supply? Can we promote affordable housing, workforce housing? And I'll tell you about some tools for how you can actually work on the buyer side of that equation, and enhance neighborhood livability. So residential TIF can be a really awesome tool that can be used to make that happen. Now, just a little bit of background on how TIF works. Adam's talking about tax abatements. I saw recently a community, a really savvy community, that overlaid a residential TIF area with a tax abatement. So if we concurrently say we're going to establish a TIF district, what we're saying is the property tax revenue that is generated within that area, the increment. So we've got that base value of what the property is worth today. Let's say a piece of land is worth $500,000, but when we develop it, it's going to be worth 15 million when we're done. The increment, the 14.5 million, the property tax revenue that we generated on that actually becomes available to the project to make it possible in that case when we use a TIF. Now, if we overlaid that with a tax abatement and we shut off the taxes, we will generate no TIF. So they had to go back and rework all their legal documents to make that distinction that no, it's a TIF or a tax abatement. We cannot do both here. But the idea of a TIF is you think about the tax increment that could be generated. Everyone's taxing areas are different, but you think about the amount of dollars that can be generated. We're talking annually about $2,500 maybe per unit, just rough numbers. If we're saying, a $250,000 new construction home buyer unit is coming onto the market, that actually adds up over that 20 to 22 year tax window that you might have in place. So when we think about how we use it, we're trying to do economic development. Housing is economic development. We now know this. It's a part of our community's infrastructure. We can do neighborhood revitalization with it, and we build housing. Now, when we think about how good those opportunities are, we balance that out with, we do have a burden of that tax redistribution that happens. Someone's got to pay for the services being brought to that project. Schools, for instance, they're going to need to serve those students in the case we're serving families, let's say. And we've got to think about how are they going to manage if we're actually not adding to their coffers as we're adding more need for those services. The lack of guaranteed affordability in residential TIF, we're not taking people's incomes when they're coming through the door like we might with a LIHTC, low-income housing tax credit deal. And of course, we want to make sure that when we do implement a TIF district that we're using those dollars in a compliant way. All in all, these are the types of tools that folks like, Adam and Sullivan Development and other developers, there's a whole kit of tools that they're using. But obviously residential TIF on this graph, it's HOTIF, and then commercial TIF are really two key pieces to that picture when we're developing housing. And again, these are the traditional tools. So one thing, and then I'll ask for questions. One thing that I strongly recommend is that anytime you're looking at a deal, like we mentioned, that traditional, we've got a developer here, they want us to invest in their housing development project that they're bringing to our community, and they're using low-income housing tax credits. Underwriting that deal and understanding whether that's the particular tool in your orchestra of different instruments is really an important step to take. And certainly if you're a housing development organization on this call, this is something to really think about if you're looking at filling a gap. First question, and I say you got to get the digits, DIGIT. So determination is, what's the size of the financing gap and why does it exist? As Adam shared, a low-income housing tax credit deal, one, extremely competitive. So there's a chance you may be waiting a few years for that to happen, potentially. Two, it does add to the cost a lot of times of housing development. Three, if you know what your market potential is, and I'll talk about that in just a moment, you may not be targeting the right part of the segment of the market by just going with tax credits as your main source. So looking at the financing gap and why it exists, looking at the equity infusion and how that's going to affect the project and its outcomes. And you see, I'm talking about this in terms of your project because as an investor, communities really need to see themselves as part of the equation in all deals, whether it's zoning or otherwise. But definitely, if you're supporting a LIHTC, low-income housing tax credit deal, making sure that that is going to accomplish your community's outcomes is critical. Looking at other ways to help the developer to fill the gap can be very powerful. I just mentioned TIF. That could be a very powerful tool to get over that particular gap if we're in a really competitive market, and we are with low-income housing tax credits. How will your housing program positively impact the community where it's being built? How is this going to come across? We'll talk about community engagement in a little bit. And then finally, will it be transformative? These are huge dollar deals. So if we're going to be investing, bringing 30, 40 or more units into the community in one place, and it's, 15, 20, 30 million dollars, the question is it transforming that community in a way that actually helps us to spur more development? We know that that deal alone can't get it done. So just some considerations as we're thinking about doing deals. And so I will pause there and ask if there are any questions. And then I have a case study on how we can look at understanding our market potential before we look at these deals and see it through that lens.
Heather, we actually have one request and one
Okay.
question, more or less. So the request is, can they get the slides? So with your permission, we will post them with the recording.
Really interesting.
And Adam, we'll talk to you later, but I'm assuming they'll be okay. That'll be okay as well. And then the next question is, how do we really get our elected officials to understand this information?
Wow. You actually are leading into my next step. So,
Well, there you go.
the whole thing, this whole conversation around housing, as governments, we need metrics, right? And so as we look at what are the indicators that we need housing, we know that when people are showing up at our door constantly saying, hey, we need housing, your housing advocates or employers are a lot of that conversation, certainly realtors, saying, hey, we've only got a month's worth of inventory on hand. One county, I can tell you, 35 units countywide is all they have available. The question is, well, what do we need? Because I can tell you, I've gone into communities where they said, hey, housing's a problem. Can you come talk to us? And inevitably, there's a developer sitting at the table who says, we don't need this. I've got 30 lots on the edge of town. And I'll tell you, they're 1 acre lots. And these are minimum 2,800 square foot, foundation homes usually. And they say, we don't need housing, because if we needed housing, those units would be sold. And the answer is you need to right size it. So a public official needs to understand not just that we have a housing problem, but the specifics of our housing problem. Because when we talk about homegrown strategies, what I really mean there is that we understand our unique housing situation and how it fits into a bigger context, which is usually a region of, like we're talking today, of multiple counties. Because if the elected official knows what the housing problem is and the specifics around that, they then can kind of grasp, I guess we can put together a plan for implementing a program that will accomplish that. But just going on, we think there's a problem because employers are complaining that, travel distance is too long for employees and it's their retention risks, or realtors are saying our inventory is too low. There needs to be a next step to start to quantify that. And that's literally what I'd like to talk about next, because there's what I'm seeing in a lot of communities right now is communities will then go order a housing study to be done. And in one county, I just saw they said that this county could produce countywide a couple hundred housing units over the next, they needed a couple hundred housing units over the next 5 years. And what I have on hand, when they look at it through the lens of market potential, they actually needed hundreds and hundreds of houses, close to 1,000. So we need to be using the right tools to understand the housing problem, articulate the housing problem, quantify it, and then start working on our policies to figure out what's keeping it from happening. That is the H.O.M.E method that I'm going to talk through right now. So when we think about how housing optimization through market empowerment works, I'll talk about the details, but it begins with this idea that we need to understand not demand, because demand says someone showed up at my door and wanted to rent this apartment and I've got a waiting list a mile long. Now that's great information, right? That's demand for that particular product. But potential actually looks and goes beyond that. It says, I liken it to if I want to buy condiments at the grocery store and my local grocery store has ketchup, but I really want some hot sauce and some chili sauce. And I go to my grocery store and all I can find is ketchup. I am going to go shop somewhere else. And market potential is when someone comes to your community, they search up Zillow every time their lease comes up in that other community, and they do not find what they're looking for. They will either stay where they're at or go somewhere else. And that is lost. That is lost demand, if you will. That's undocumented demand because you didn't have the product for them to show up at. So a realtor might say, I had 10 families show up for this one particular house on this street. Like I say, you might have waiting lists over here at this apartment complex, but potential says, these are the people who are your leakage. They're the ones who didn't find the product they wanted at the price point they were looking for, and therefore bought or rented somewhere else. So believe it or not, we can figure that out. Noble County is the latest example I'll share with you. And I'll tell you a little bit more about how this is working at a regional level. But what they found, if you're familiar with Noble County in Northeast Indiana, really wonderful place. Kendallville is located there. 2,295 households of all incomes are looking around for housing in Noble County every single year, looking to live there. So they're searching up Zillow, they're looking on apartments.com, whatever. So what does that mean? A very conservative estimate is they need 1,130 to 1,526 new housing units built in Kendallville, Ligonier, Avila, Albion, Rome City, and could grow by almost 10% if they build to their market potential. Now, when we broke that down, the first question is, well, who are these folks, and where are they coming from? And so what we found was, and this is Zimmerman Volk Associates is a partner of ours that does a phenomenal job. This is a proprietary product, but I can tell you I started using it when I was in the city of Fort Wayne, somewhere around 2004, I want to say. And it took us about close to 10 years to decide they were right about the ability to absorb 200 new rental units in our downtown every year. And if you know what's going on in Fort Wayne today, I mean, we have $1 million units. We've had $1 billion permit years. And Zimmerman Volk told us that long before we ever started building. So it took a long time for me to go out and get laughed at when I was saying we have this market potential. But now this is just, what I'm going to show you with Noble County is super cool. This is a rural county largely. And so what we know about their market potential is not only do we have 2,295 households of all incomes, but the bulk of the people looking here, 43% traditional and non-traditional families, and then another 33% are younger singles and couples. So a full 76% of the market potential are millennials. Now, when you start to think about millennials and housing, there's a lot of different dynamics at work. They're buying later. They need down payment assistance. They earn quite a bit of money. They just probably have some student debt they're working with. And so then the remaining 24% are empty nesters and retirees. And I'm going to tell you what's really interesting about this is that I'm going to show you where these folks are coming from in just a moment. Now, based on these populations, and again, we're talking market potential, the people who are looking for chili sauce and hot sauce, and not just ketchup, we basically have then information about their incomes so we can extrapolate what they want to buy and how much they can afford. So in this case, Zimmerman Vogt says we need 36% rentals, and the remaining 64% need to be condos, townhouses, and detached houses. And I would say those two in the middle, condos and townhouses, those are low because we don't have much of that today, but we're seeing more and more of it coming onto the market, just denser products. So 36% rentals, 64% home buyers. Now these public officials have real information about exactly what they need to be building, and now the price points as well. So the price points are broken down into affordable workforce rents and prices. So that's the wage earners at 60% to 80% of area median income. I'm looking at your area median incomes across the region, and you're not dissimilar, I would say, to Noble County. So rental apartments, if we want to go workforce affordable, $800 to $1,500 a month. And detached houses need to be at 175 to 230. Now we just heard Adam say 250. And I nodded my head because 250 is about rock bottom, bare minimum we're ever going to see if we're trying to build new houses. And I would say we still have to subsidize some of the land development cost if we want to sell a house at 250. So you might be saying, my goodness, so no one's going to be able to buy a house at that 175 to 230. And I'll tell you why I believe they can. Then we go into the market rate rents and prices. This is where things get super interesting. So in Noble County, those earning 80% to 100% of AMI who are in their market potential can afford, are willing to pay, able to pay between $1,100 and $2,100 a month for rentals. And then, as you see, depending on the density, between 210,000 and 425,000 for new construction homes that will be built and put in the market. So you might
Heather,
be saying,
before you move forward,
yeah.
we have a couple questions.
Oh, good. Yes.
That I think are relevant to your last section. So there's some interest in how you guys determined how many people were looking. And then I think you already addressed this, but just maybe address it again. How did you determine how many of them were buyers versus how many of them were renters?
So this is the magic of our partner Zimmerman Vogt Associates. Again, I've worked with them for now, gosh, over 20 years, I guess. And their proprietary method looks at IRS data. They're looking at people moving around. They're looking at different facets of information that has been tested. They've done this all over the country, discovered them, 20 years ago when I was working in Fort Wayne, and it has proven true. And these are very conservative numbers, but they are using standard data from the IRS is a big one. People have to report where they're moving from and to. And so they are able to then show, okay, this is the market that exists for this particular county. But it's phenomenal and it's tested. So as we start to look, and remember what they're looking at is the who and getting that demographic information, and then how much can they afford, and we're backing into these numbers. That is very different than looking at what's on the street today and saying who wants to buy it. This is saying these are people who want to live here. This is how much they make. And based on that 30% of the gross monthly income, this is what they can afford. This is what's really driving development in a lot of communities today. And public officials in particular are very interested because what they're saying is, I've got to get involved in market rate housing development, which has not been a part of the conversation in the past. And so then it leads us to say, oh my goodness, we've got to make sure we're being thoughtful about affordability. It's like we used to have NIMBYism in the past where people were saying, let's not build this because of those people. What we have now is we're going to use Indiana's housing market to our advantage. And this is where it gets super cool. So in Noble County, what that IRS data and other US census data, there's lots of different pieces that go into their stew. What it told us was Noble County, of that 2,295 households every year looking, 44.4% of them live in Noble County. Everybody else is either outside that county, in the case of, the regional draw area, 26.8. So these are neighboring counties, probably people who are working there in Noble County, but have to commute from somewhere else because they can't find the housing they want. The big county, Allen County. So that means they're paying a lot more in rents and home prices if they're living there, and probably driving 40 minutes to work. And then this really interesting one, balance of the US. And I'm going to show you how we can actually see it in real time on our Club 720 platform. But Noble County, only 44% of their market potential lives there today. So if we're putting up a billboard, more close to 60% of the people who are looking there will never know that new housing's coming on board. So this is where communities are like, okay, so we're now importing. So almost 20% are coming from outside of the state of Indiana. We're now importing incomes, residents, taxpayers to Indiana by this 20% number. And I'm seeing this all over. It's usually closer to 20%. So if we have 44.4% coming from Noble County, their current population is 48,157. They've got almost 18,000 households. 58% of them are 1 and 2 person households. Median household income, 64.8. Look at this. Their median housing value, 166.2. If 44% of their current market potential are moving out of a house that's valued somewhere in that 166.2 range, I'm just going to flip back through some slides really quick. We now 166.2 is even below the low end of our workforce affordable for detached houses. If we can move this inventory, we free up affordable housing sitting on our streets. And what's really cool is if we build to the new construction numbers that we saw, 325 to 4, so 210 to 425, flipping through, forewarning, we're now we'll never hit that number. We cannot get there with our current housing stock. We have to diversify the stock if we're going to attract the households who want to live here. So where are these going to be built? Because that's the county's next conversation, is like, these are all the towns and cities are sitting around the table as part of our home method. We bring everyone together to basically plan this out. How is this going to happen? The question is, well, who's getting all this market capture? Well, I can tell you who won't get it, and that's the ones who don't decide to move. So if a public elected official decides, I'm just going to wait to see what falls off the truck, and I have heard economic development leaders say that 5 years ago, they're not saying it anymore. That becomes, okay, that's your default mode. So you may not see housing production, but Kendallville, who is doing a downtown development, and Ligonier, who has 26 acres that it had on hand that it's going to build on, are two that are taking action there in Noble County. And look at this. They need 69 to 86 new rentals. They can capture conservatively 69 to 86 new rentals in their downtown, and it's an awesome downtown, every single solitary year, if they want to keep up with their own market potential. But let's say a villa, Albion decides they're not going to build any. We still have market potential in that county that needs to be absorbed. So, they could definitely stand to have a few more if they needed to. So their downtown development project, we're looking at massing analyses on the buildings that the community leaders have come together. We've got the mayor, we've got their Main Street organization, we've got all kinds of partners, economic development coming around the table, and they've chosen the buildings, and we're getting them under site control, making sure that they have enough mass to make the deal work. And then we're going and finding the developers who want to accomplish their vision. So the real question for Noble County is not anymore waiting for the developer to show up at the door with a dilemma that they have to help solve, which is a good problem to have. Many communities aren't seeing that yet. It's, should we wait for the market to come back on its own, or should we get started on our own projects now? And at least 2 communities 3 actually, Albion's working on it as well, are taking action and getting started. So I'll take a pause there and start to tell you about catalyst sites and how that works. But certainly, Adam, I would love to hear your ideas on that approach, where communities are coming out to you saying, hey, we've got some buildings and money. So.
Yeah, I mean, this is great, Heather. I think one thing that really stuck out to me, just thinking this through holistically, is the seniors. You can have affordable senior projects too. If you build that, you can still have a bocce court, pickleball court, spa. You can have physical therapists having their office on the first floor. If they decide they want to stay in their hometown, move to a nice retirement community, that's going to open up the existing housing stock for those millennials that can afford that range of house instead of building a new one. They can move into those houses. So it solves two problems, and the millennials grow roots there. The seniors can stay in their community. So don't want to really dismiss that you can have senior affordable housing too.
Awesome point.
We don't have any specific questions yet.
Okay.
So
awesome.
thank you.
Okay, well, not awesome, but just definitely want to invite the questions. So,
Yep.
So as we look at this through the lens of housing optimization through market empowerment, the H.O.M.E method, these communities are coming together. These public officials now know, and this is where I say, before, ignorance is bliss. I did not know as a community leader that 2,295 households of all incomes were looking to live here. Now I know. And the question is, what do I want to do about it? Now, I love that this is ROI that's putting this on, because it is all about ROI for communities. It's about return on investment. If I'm going to invest tax dollars, TIF being a primary tool here, what happens when I decide to do that proactively? I've got some free land, I've got some TIF, what can I do with it? And the answer is you can do a lot with that, just those two things. So those communities are now taking those numbers and saying, okay, we can build to our own market potential. And if we do that, we will see our tax base stabilize even more, and we will be helping Indiana as a whole. So catalyst sites are designed to say, okay, why then, if we have all this market potential, is Adam not showing up and saying, hey, we're going to do a market rate deal and we're going to do LIHTC because we need to get those seniors into great housing. We want to make sure we love our seniors and let them age in place. But we want to also do a market rate deal because, look, you've got some great market potential. And the answer is because there are market forces that work against housing. When your median value is 166,200 and you want to build a $300,000, $400,000 house in that community, comparables become the problem in the home buyer side. And the same thing happens with rents. I'll show you rents in a few minutes. So in this community, again, I'm just showing you what they did. And this is all kind of codified in an adopted housing strategy. They then selected where are the sites we're going to get started as a county, which communities are going to go first. Ligonier stepped up, like I mentioned, with their 27 acres, where there's a beautiful mixed use project that's going to be going in there. And Town of Albion stepped up. They've got some properties they're looking at. And then Kendallville is the one who I just talked with yesterday, and they're moving forward with a downtown mixed use, the hardest version of any of this that you'll do as a community, but it's worth it, because if we counteract the forces that exist to keep an $1,100 a month unit coming onto the scene in some communities, in their community, well, I'll show you these rents. The irony of me being an affordable housing advocate saying that we need to get the rents up in a community is not lost on me. So I'm an advocate for everyone living in housing they can afford. That's what I'm not talking about big A affordable. I'm talking about little a affordability. And what I can afford is different than what Adam can afford. And so we just want to live in affordable housing, right? But when I say affordable to most communities, they think of big A, low income housing tax credits. What I'm suggesting here is if we all focus on little a and say, okay, big A affordable housing is a part of our orchestra of instruments, but it is not the only horn. It's not the only drum. Then we start to see that you can actually free up the affordable housing stock on the streets and have an overall impact on the community. And that's what these communities are doing. So, and it's a basic value of the H.O.M.E method. So as we develop this methodology within communities, every single solitary one is different, but it all starts with that market potential analysis. And what we're really trying to do there is to combine these two circles that you can see here. We have the community's wants, needs, and desires. So Noble County wants to grow. It wants to absorb its entire market potential and more. It wants to serve its employers who are trying to attract talent. And just mind you, those market potential analyses do not include the hundreds of new hires that expanding employers are talking about, right? They're only looking at documented IRS data, standard data that you can get available that can be backed up in that document. So when you have an employer that's crying out saying, I've got retention risks, like I saw with a hospital in one of our counties in Northeast Indiana, who said, I've got 50% of my nurses, let's say 50% of my hospital personnel are driving from North Fort Wayne to work 40 minutes, and they are a huge retention risk. You think about COVID, how many they lost, what that means to a community that's an anchor employer for sure. Same thing with teachers, right? If we do not have those services covered, it tears at our own fabric. So what the community's wants, needs, and desires are, I also know childcare is a big deal, is in that one circle. We need housing for nurses. We need housing for teachers. We need childcare services. We want to combine that circle with what that private sector partner, what Adam and his team at Sullivan can do. And we want to push them together. And that's where we get housing optimization. And that's where we see market empowerment actually happen. And that gray area right in between is where we really see the public-private partnership form. So, yes.
We do have a couple of questions if this is a good time.
Perfect, yes.
About those topics. So
Okay.
I'm going to start with the first one. How do you recommend finding or selecting developers that are willing to work alongside stacking strategists aiming to develop holistically rather than the easiest or siloed option, especially in small rural communities?
Implement this method I'm going to tell you about, because this is exactly what that is. And that I'm that housing strategist, capital stacker that was like, there's got to be a better way. It can't just be a developer comes to me with what they can do and that's what we have to accept. But it also can't be that the community says, we want the moon and the stars, Adam, and we're not going to give you a penny for it. Go do it. So we have to come up with something where we can meet in the middle. And that is precisely, I'll walk you through step by step how we do that. I call it the 6 steps to success.
Okay, and the second question sort of leads into that too, is how would you advise a local unit of government to prioritize strategy over incoming? In other words, when using market analysis for what the community needs for housing, how do you best steer a development project towards the housing you want to see or what is determined by a housing study or other market studies? And then he added a caveat there, when incentives are limited.
Yes. So scarce resources is what this is all about. When those communities prioritized where they were going to do it, I'm going to tell you the number one contribution I think a community can make is land. And in doing that, you end up telling the developer where you want them to go because you're giving them the piece of land or giving it very cheaply. And number two, you're able to now invest. And I'm going to keep using that word. You are an investor. And as an investor, you have expectations. So as that developer comes to the table and says, hey, I want to show you my track record, I'm looking for what kinds of funding sources have they used? And have they read our market potential analysis? Do I have a document that actually tells the market potential is the number one question. But when I think about what communities, the tools communities currently use, the standard traditional tools to communicate their wants, needs, and desires, do they have a comp plan? Do they have a zoning code that's in place? And does that zoning code facilitate what we want? So that becomes right after that market potential analysis gets done, we immediately go into a catalyst project because that community's actually, the steering committee is made up of the community leaders and decision makers. And guess what? They get to see the impact of their zoning code on density. They get to see the impact of their zoning code on infill housing. And so all of a sudden we start to line up in those catalyst sites, because we only should have to do up to maybe 3 countywide to really counteract those forces. We should come out of that with a really good idea of whether the comp plan needs updated, whether our zoning code is aligned. If we had to make exceptions, we're going to go back and make that a work element, that we're going to fix that so that the next developer that shows up, they don't have to jump through hoops to get that done, because it's what we want. And then we're going to do excellent underwriting on these deals. And so that's where this ecosystem starts to form. So we've got housing optimization, where we convene the community leadership to define that market potential, identify those potential sites, and then establish a production plan. You saw that what Noble County did. The partners that we're talking to with these tools and documents are developers. Now I say because I'm going to tell you about a key partner you're going to need in this if you want to really do it well. Architects. We want a really good urban designer who gets quality of life to be planning out these sites with us. We're going to work directly with our own financial advisors. And I've worked with Baker Tilly primarily in most communities, but I know there are many more. But Lennon Whitty Group is in one of them. But the idea is we're going to work with the community's own financial advisors to start looking at what we call TIF runs. If we're going to build this, what kind of money does this thing generate? Because that starts to tell us our return on investment. It also may give us a tool that we can use to invest with. Real estate specialists, and then certainly engineers. Once we get that piece in place and we know what our market potential is and where we want to build it and who those partners are that we're talking to, we move into market empowerment. Because if we just build it, the question is, will they come? And what I told you was, in the case of Noble County, almost 60% of them do not live in that county. Now we've got to come up with really awesome strategies to attract those millennials, by and large, who are coming from other places, even outside of the United States, and help them overcome their barriers to getting here, whether that's down payment assistance, whether that is, making sure that we've got the right product and placement that they're looking for. And so we're working with realtors, employers, banks, lenders, builders, to make sure that we empower them to do what we need them to do to get things done. The 6 steps to success are pretty simple to look at, but I'll tell you that it's a lot of hard work, but it's worth it. We want to set the table in step 1 and get the leadership established. This is not a short-term program. This is a year-long process of understanding the market potential, yes, but also giving public, especially decision makers, public officials, the tools they need to make decisions, very difficult decisions, and then also equipping them with how we're going to approach the community, employers, and all those different stakeholders. So we set the table. That's the most important step. We then move into understanding that market potential, and we find out just how many units do we need, at what price points, and then we just go tell the world, because we want to tell them. We want to tell them, because if builders are out there and they're building the wrong product, maybe that's why those 30 units on the edge of town aren't moving. Then we prioritize those sites. Now, when we talk about market potential, ideally, we've already established site control. Why? Because at least one community I know of, they talked about their market potential analysis, and they actually breathed a location, and it was snapped up immediately. Why? Because, oh, well, we know the deep pockets of government are going to fund this. And that project never happened. So you want units, you want to build first on sites that the community already owns, if possible. And if we don't own it, we need to get site control before we start talking anything about that, so that we can know that we can actually go to closing if we decide we want to do that project. We design that housing program, and then we launch the sales and marketing, because it is a big part of this. And we set metrics and we measure housing production. Now, I will tell you, if you look up 5 years after you do a housing market potential analysis and say, how did we do? Chances are you're going to have what Northeast Indiana had, which was, it learned back in 2018, it needed 15,000 housing units in the 10 counties around Allen. So, this is where Noble County is located. And they looked up 5 years later, pulled all the building permit data. Of those 15,000, they needed 36% rental, 60% home buyer, 64% home buyer, just like Noble's numbers. That's just a coincidence. And what they found was 5,134 units had been built. and only 6% of them were rentals. Now think, if you've got a big market potential coming from other areas and other states, they're going to want to rent first. They're typically not going to go straight to buying because they need to get their feet wet, figure it out. So we built 6% rentals. So we started, but we really didn't measure. So metrics becomes really key, and getting those building permits. If you know what your number of building permits are today, you get a special prize. So I told you there's one secret part of the secret sauce you have to make sure you have, and that is what we call an optimizer. It is a nonprofit who exists to facilitate the catalyst sites. Why? A nonprofit developer who understands the market potential, and how to do development. And I know communities have them. I used to train them when I helped IHCDA with CHODOs, community housing development organizations. They sometimes are really good places to start if they understand the broader market and not just subpopulations. If they understand the mechanics of development and are willing to take on this risk, this is a key linchpin between the private developer, the community at large, and the local government. They are the center of that gray center of those two circles that intersected in the H.O.M.E method slide. Their job is to help the community to select and prioritize the catalyst sites, to get a form of site control, get all the way through development, including bringing on that development partner that the community selects, and then going through the visioning process and making sure that we get it airtight, determining project feasibility. They're going to be your lead capital stacker. They can receive free land from the community because a redevelopment commission maybe would have to go through a public process to dispose of it. Well, you could actually give it to a nonprofit to do that, but their job is to do the will of the community and to negotiate with that developer to get the best deal at the best price in the right location, so that those two circles really do intersect. And then most importantly, in my book, is to build that buyer renter pipeline. So we're connecting with the employers and the realtors to make sure that we have the tools in place to serve them as they come in and say, hey, I want to live here. Now, that lead capital stacker, the optimizer, can really do some powerful things for communities, but they have to be very, very skilled at doing this. And so not just anybody can do it. That's what I would say. But they're going to right size the housing unit production in accordance with that market potential. They're going to be like, I call it a mobile housing office, that, if I'm a mayor and I want to see something done and I don't have a person with a 16-member staff like me in Fort Wayne, you call on your optimizer, and typically they work regionally. And they're basically going to help to create those public-private partnerships. But even more importantly is, as you start to loosen up that market and the private sector decides it's going to come in and do these deals on their own, they will help to right size the investments in those deals and figure out which part of the orchestra, which instrument or instruments you need to use to get the deal done. And then they're going to help to reduce those financing gaps, because they can do certain things that for-profit developers can't do. So reduce your site acquisition costs. They can accept that free or reduced price land. They offer a reduced developer fee. Nonprofit developers don't have to make 15%, right? So they can reduce that developer fee. And in one case, we had a major global employer say, hey, so I could actually make a charitable contribution to the nonprofit, and then you wouldn't charge a developer fee at all. And that would really make housing more affordable, right? And the answer was absolutely yes. They also champion the acquisition of non-traditional financing tools. So establishing those employer-driven housing programs, impact investments from community foundations, creating those buyer renter pipelines. And so it's a full service operation. But I do believe once you know your market potential, you have to get started with catalyst sites using an optimizer. So I'll pause there to see if there's, I just gave a lot of information all at once. And
it looks like Michelle Cole had a question. Does Bloomington or Monroe County have this kind of nonprofit? If so, who is it? And that may be a question for Lisa. But she is about to jump on.
Sorry. We do have a couple of housing nonprofit developers. Bloomington Restorations Inc. Primarily focuses on historic renovation in Monroe County. We also have a very active Habitat for Humanity. And then I think that occasionally some other nonprofit developers have come online to do specific projects. But we do have a really good, robust in the region group of for-profit developers who are starting to move into workforce housing and affordable housing spaces as well that have been great partners as well. Heather, do you see that in other communities?
You know, I think just when you, I mean, for instance, the Habitat for Humanity can be a very, very wonderful partner, especially builders. I would say that's a perfect start. And yes, if those boards were interested in helping, and basically what they're doing is they're becoming an extension of the government, which is a charity in and of itself, can be heading in that. Now you're always going to want attorneys to help you to make sure as a nonprofit, you're staying in alignment with that charitable mission. But what we're doing is we're taking and helping those communities get that housing strategy built, rooted in that market potential analysis. We're helping them to get that land assembled. So we are serving a public purpose when we're doing that. The community, this is what the community wants. When those private nonprofits, their boards look at this role, and I could give you a job description for them, that's what we want them to do. And they need to be excellent capital stackers. They need to really understand development finance. And so, when I think about the 6 steps to success, that optimizer needs to be dialed right into the region's housing needs or the county's housing needs and the ability to close those gaps. They're not working independently of the private sector, which is sometimes what I see. It's like, I'm a CHO, so I only use home funds. Or I'm a nonprofit housing developer and I only serve low income seniors or only disabled populations. Typically, they're going to need to expand and get more focused on the broader aspects of creating workforce housing. And so that would be the pivot but those all sound like really good start to say, hey, would you be interested in becoming an optimizer? And this capital stacking for risk mitigation, this is how the optimizer kind of goes through the scan of all the resources that could be available. So site assembly and pre-development, as I mentioned, Noble County, Kendallville, and Ligonier, they not only had sites and were willing to buy those sites. In the case of Kendallville, Ligonier had the land and gave that 27 acres to the optimizer to develop. They are sitting in a steering committee guiding that development, helping to select that developer, and they've promised residential TIF funds in one case, or TIF funds. They're agreed to pull out the stops, and they've put up $50,000 for pre-development, which could be lost. So you think about all of the de-risking that happens in the pre-development process to figure out whether this moves forward. And what I would say is most of them do. And I'll give you some quick examples here. But once we have those in place, sometimes private debt alone can get the deal done. I can tell you on single family detached, I'm seeing those two together, you can pretty much get it done. But when it comes to rents, Adam said at the top of his list, he's looking at those net rents. Well, even at the higher levels, you're going to try to see what could we produce if we had, instead of $800 a month rents, $1,200 a month rents. And I can tell you that $400 a month rent difference, which is what maybe the bank would say it can underwrite your deal and will finance it on. But really, you've got market potential that says, hey, I would be willing easily to pay $1,200 a month. Why? Because in the case of that hospital, I'm driving 40 minutes every day to work. I'm living in North Fort Wayne, paying $1,800 a month in rent. I can move in walkable distance to my employer and pay $600 a month less. Well, guess what? That bank can't see it, but I could tell you that hospital might say, look, I'll take a master lease on 20 units and I will pay that $1,200 a month because I've got all kinds of employee engagement opportunities through that. And I'm making a better way for my employees. And now all of a sudden the bank says, okay, well, maybe we will underwrite it at $1,200 a month. So there are ways to get this done. And I know I'm getting into some details, but your optimizer, that's the kind of thing they're looking at. And then certainly local governments are putting in things like ARPA money. We've got ready money in a couple of deals I'll show you here in just a second, and doing infrastructure bonds. And then finally, layer number 5 is at the bottom of the stack, because if we had to go and compete for LIHTC, now this is if a community is driving it. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it's a bad tool. It's a great tool for developers who get it and do it well. I'm saying as you develop, all of these are all locally sourced, and LIHTC isn't listed here because it is something you have to go outside your community. But everything else here you can find typically inside of your community. Even ready is coming into the regional level. But here in 5, those are, you could authorize a 501c3 bond. That's a whole session. You may have home funds if you receive them. And Federal Home Loan Bank dollars, your local bank can help you access those. So all these tools are really homegrown tools by and large. So just real quickly, a regional approach to housing is the best, in my opinion. Housing is a regional topic, like water flows. If I build to my market potential and you build to your market potential, and we're in 2 different counties even, it's definitely going to impact both communities, could be negatively if we don't plan it out well. So having a regional housing strategy is critical. Knowing the regional market potential, like I said, 15,000 housing units outside of Allen was good to know, because those were all the rural counties in Northeast Indiana. Allen did its, and now we had, let's say another 10,000 housing units over 5 years. It's a lot of work to do. Then the counties come in and they do a county-wide housing strategy. They understand their own market potential and start doing those catalyst sites. Then we do a housing element, let's say, in a comp plan update. We may decide that, we need to update that zoning as a part of it. And then each project has its own kind of development plan to go with it. So that's how you can actually go from 30,000 feet right down onto the ground on a regional strategy. And then at the regional level, what we do is do things like ready, right? We're bringing in money. We have a plan, that is tied to all of our counties. We do, we encourage collaboration and, bring in our optimizer. We look at whether projects are aligning with that regional housing strategy. We provide technical assistance if needed to implement those strategies. And that's where that regional optimizer might make sense. And then we do performance monitoring. And we're not saying every county has to do anything. We're saying whosoever will, we're going to make sure that you get your vision accomplished. And that's, again, what Northeast Indiana found. We had 21,000 households moving around within that 10 county region every single year. This is back in 2018. But look at this. We had net out migration in all of these places as of 2015. Only Allen saw an uptick. This is 2015. Now we're one of the bigger growing regions, right? We've been cited as that. And so when you look at, that's what 2015 looked like. And this is what the household incomes looked like at that time. It was very interesting to say, okay, median home values. I think this is going to be a historical slide I should put on my wall. Who will ever see $100,000 homes ever again, right? But that's being said, we learned 3,179 units per year. As I mentioned, 15,000 outside of Allen needed to be built over that 5-year period. And our market potential was 45% were those traditional and non-traditional families, 31% those younger and single couples. This is probably looking familiar. 24% empty nesters and retirees. And this is how the counties broke down in what percentage. The only way they could tell what counties would get was based on their population. So this wasn't really a real number, but it did move communities to go, okay, well, look, if I got to build 200 units a year in Adams County and we saw 10 permits last year, we better get going if we want to keep up with our own market potential. Economic development took the lead. And I can tell you now, and I'll show you, we did establish a regional optimizer, 501c3. It is certified as a CHO.E, not because it operates as one necessarily and uses home funds from the state, but to demonstrate that it is able to do housing development. Currently, it has over 800 housing units in various stages of development throughout the county, and it's administering about 5 million in ready. So just really quickly, this is the region, and these are all of the counties with the stars where there are county-wide housing strategies that are ongoing. And I will tell you, Wells has just reached out. this is where all of the housing projects are going on. And as you can tell, I mean, there are projects going on in all of these counties, but these are where the optimizer is working to neutralize those forces. We just had a regional impact analysis done for our Ready 2. And this is what I was told by our region about what this optimizer is doing and the impact that it can have just if we reach our market potential in Northeast Indiana. 1,714 new jobs would be created to support those new households that would be coming in. $88 million in new wages from those jobs, adding a value of $162 million to the local economy through wages and taxes, and $286 million derived from additional output of goods and services. So what we're talking about is if we just attract those out of region households in this one region to Northeast Indiana, right? I'm not talking, we look at all the other regions we've got in Indiana. What this does for our local economy is amazing. And we're in vogue right now because we are affordable. So I'm going to just show you a few case studies and examples quickly, because I know we're past time. But Wabash, Indiana is a perfect example. 10,000 people in the city. If you've been downtown Wabash, it's amazing. Amazing leader and Mayor Scott Long. And we just actually did a ribbon cutting for this development last week. $15 million in total investment, 44 new home buyers. This land was given by Parkview Hospital to the city, gave it to the optimizer. The optimizer then put together a plan with the steering committee. This happened pre-COVID, so this has been a very tenacious group of people. Today, we have ready of about $2.5 million that was invested in the infrastructure program there. The local government, Mayor Long, basically took the site that was gifted, but also built in some, basically bought some properties around it in order to make sure that it was what we could build on all of it. We expect about $12 million in private mortgages through this 44 unit development. The estimated residential TIF, so let's talk about ROI. $2 million was about 1.9, I think, million dollars that was estimated in the TIF run. And again, very conservative number from the financial advisor. The estimated average development cost for the lots. This is why you need an optimizer and why you're counteracting those forces. $74,000 for the lot development alone. Estimated average sale price. This is what the market shows. 34.9 minimum or median, right? Some more, some less. So we had a net of $39,100 per lot that no developer's ever going to give $39,000 a lot and do that deal. So we had a $1.7 million gap. Now, what was really cool is because of the READY funds, that residential TIF number is actually coming back to the mayor's coffers, and he's got 4 or 5 other projects he's ready to do in just one city of Wabash. Now, if you decide to do what Kendallville is doing, I'm going to give you another case study, and this is a downtown development at the corner of 9 and 20. The optimizer decided, worked with the community. One piece of property was given by the community foundation, but all the other pieces had to be assembled. We had a gas station there. So if you know how that works, there's a lot that goes into that. But this was the design the community came up with, $21.5 million, 52 units, rental and home buyer units. And this is the capital stack. Now I will tell you, this deal is not yet moving forward, but these are the sources that the developer came up with and still had a $7 million gap. We learned a lot from this project. And what we know is when you look at the construction costs, looking at that cost per unit, Adam mentioned $160,000 a door, or getting it down to $150 a door, $135 a door, whatever. This one was over $400,000 a door. So getting those construction costs dialed in, first step. And so the optimizer can engage parties that can actually give you the best numbers so that you can actually know you're getting the right numbers. Those are the kinds of things that optimizers bring to the table in terms of continuously looking to understand the costs, get those costs down, and fill those gaps. Now, I mentioned this rental housing dilemma. So this is perfect for this project because when you look at Adams County in Northeast Indiana, their current rents are somewhere in that, I guess I was told $700-800 a month. but where they're supposed to be is around 1,500 to 3,000 if they want to attract the market potential. Same thing with Huntington, right? LaGrange, same thing. My guess is same thing with your county. You really need higher rents if you're going to free up the affordable stock that's on the streets, whether that's rentals or home buyer units. And so these communities then have to come up with really fancy ways to figure out how to help the banks to see those higher rents because they don't have the comps yet. So we're talking about master leases. We're talking about corporate guarantees. So adding to the public sources that I showed you earlier, we're adding in all of these tools from employers, from banks and lenders, ready funds being used differently to secure the banks who want to do the deal, but can only see that $800 a month rent, right? That $400 bogey, between the $800 to $1,200 that you need, if you were to underwrite it at the market potential rent at $1,200 in the one example I gave, that's $4.8 million over a 20-year period. That's a $5 million gap that's purely based on market dynamics. And so that's why the optimizer has to get involved. So wrapping it up, this is what the housing strategy roadmap looks like in many communities. But as you can see, communication planning, housing symposia, housing fairs are really great ways, if you know your market potential, to get employers and realtors and banks and lenders involved, builders involved in housing symposiums. Making sure that you're talking to the community about those projects is critical. But really, one of the key tools that we're using right now is a platform we developed called Club 720. It is a mobile app and a web-based app that basically allows communities to localize their resources for those millennial buyers. As I mentioned earlier, they need down payment assistance. They need to be shown houses if they're coming from other places that are available from your builders, and they want to fill your pipeline, but they have to know about these things. And so Club 720 allows the market potential analysis. You saw the stock images on those slides. Club 720 turns them into real people from real places who have real dreams and aspirations to come and live in your community. And in doing that, there are tools that you can put in the Club 720 toolkit for your community that are free. This is a free service. It's a free tool for communities, for employers to use, that local governments can, I would say, take to jumpstart your housing market conversations. So again, market potential analysis, highly recommend understanding that versus a study, but then you combine that with Club 720 to see the real people come out of the woodwork. The lead tool on Club 720 is Hoosier Homes. Hoosier Homes has been authorized in Indiana. It is something that with a stroke of a pen, a community can authorize for their community up to 5% in down payment assistance. It is tied to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and allows communities to basically authorize it, offer it to their jurisdiction. And I will tell you, I was looking up maximum income is, you probably see somewhere here, 140% of area median income. Everything I would say, as I was looking at your 140%, Brown is at 136,220. That's on the borrower only. You've got Greene at 115,780 Greene County, Crawford County and Davies County are also at 115,780. And then, you've got Washington at 125. So the whole point here is we're talking workforce housing, workforce buyers, and workforce income levels that are much higher than what you might normally see. And again, this is a program that doesn't go away. You can authorize it through a resolution, sign a cooperative agreement with the Fort Wayne Housing Authority, and communities are doing it all over Indiana now. That product then gets offered on Club 720 and marketed to your buyers. And this is the Club 720 mobile app. And then we're able to actually produce some reporting, and I won't show you. But one other cool tool that happens is, let's say an employer decides they're going to use this and distributes a break room flyer with our QR code. You start to see those employees who want to live in your community coming on and saying, I want to buy here, I want to rent here. And they're going to be looking for things like auto loans so that they can have a reliable car for work, or renovation loans because I already live here and I just want to make my house nicer. The cool thing about that is then you can engage your banks and lenders. Banks and lenders want to be a part of all of these deals. And optimizers by default are going to be working with your local banks and lenders but you can also engage them to help buyers with credit builder loans or their own products. And so you can invite your banks and lenders to the party along with those employers and realtors through that. Now, going back to Wabash, as I mentioned, when Mayor Long announced his Hoosier Homes program, we had almost immediately, 141 buyers come on to Club 720 that were looking to buy in Wabash. 4 of them were from different cities across the country. But actually down here at the bottom, let me just say 17 plus were Wabash employers were represented in that number. So these folks they share where they work. But look at this. So over 100 home buyers at this point: Florida, California, Pennsylvania, Indianapolis, Wabash, North Manchester, Urbana, Warsaw. Guess what? We can see those stock images coming through in the Club 720 platform. Now their names, email addresses, employed individuals, they're real people. But we were really shocked to see California and Florida on there, but now we're not anymore. So this is just when he launched his Hoosier Homes program and how Club 720 was able to share that. So with that, I'll just say the call to action here is, offer Hoosier Homes for sure. These are all free tools, but the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing, in the words of Walt Disney. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Adam and Heather, for this information today. I do have another follow-up question. This is a specific question from a friend up north, and she would like to know who is the optimizer working in Northeast Indiana? See, I told you I didn't limit it to just people from the region.
Wow, that is actually it is the Housing Resource Hub, and it is the nonprofit arm of Club 720. So it is our demonstration spot, and it's working all through Northeast Indiana and all of those places, but also in a few other places up here. The good thing about having an optimizer, though, I will say, is it should work regionally. The whole idea of think globally, plan regionally, implement local, deliver and implement locally is true to form here.
Okay. All right. Do we have any last minute questions? You can pop them into the chat. I do have a couple of things I want to maybe have our esteemed guests weigh in on. So the state of Indiana, Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority has released the draft of the current Qualified Allocation Plan, or otherwise known as the QAP. We all do this. All of us housing nerds, we speak in acronym. And so I'm trying to really, stretch my memory and actually not use those acronyms, but the QAP. And it has a huge focus on small cities and rural counties. So I think this is a golden opportunity for the Indiana Uplands and other rural areas around the state to really look at expanding their housing market through this program. Adam, any advice, or Heather, any advice on how people can reach out to developers to talk about potential projects?
No, I mean, that would be great. It doesn't happen often. I guess we're trying to fix that. No, I mean, I mean, regular communication, I guess. If hopefully, I mean, we were trying to meet everybody down in French Lick, so that would have been great. But yeah, just reach out as you would LinkedIn, or send an email, or good old-fashioned phone call. Heather?
Yeah, we actually, you can get, IHCDA has lists of developers and that, but that's not everyone. Your local home builders association and that, and I'm thinking of both kinds, not just multifamily, but we put out requests for, information. Don't make them fill out a bunch of information to come in. Just have them give you their track record, their standard marketing materials, and just tell them what you're trying to do and send it out to them and let them know. I mean, that's a big way we do that with Catalyst projects, is we get that design in place, and then we go out and find developers who want to come talk to us. We then make that our partner list.
I do have a question that just popped in. Somebody who's interested in other resources, do you have books or podcasts that you follow? Anything that you're doing that you think we should advertise to help educate me and our our group on housing development.
That would be a place where I say we are very, very bereft of a lot of good stuff on that. But there are great organizations like, Indiana has a housing conference. I think it talks a lot. It speaks more to the low income housing tax credit developers than it does to the general community. But, Lisa, you and I have always kind of, we've been a little renegade in how we've done things. I remember when we got together with Indianapolis and other communities and just met to talk.
Yeah.
I think we really could use a just general local, I know AIM is doing things with its Mayor's Institute. I'll be speaking there. I know Ball State University does a housing considerations as part of its its economic development initiative that it does every year. And I do housing considerations there, but I don't know that there is an ongoing resource for developers or for communities who want to either take action, or optimizers who are out there, trying to survive. Might be time for us to figure out something like that.
Might be. We do have some regional conversations going on. And as for books, I can give you an entire list. Reach out to me personally of the things that I'm reading right now. So any last minute questions? We really want to thank you guys for spending your time with us this morning. It's been really informative and I think inspiring about how we might be able to move housing forward. As you do know, we do have a regional housing study that shows that we have a huge demand. We have a huge need. And now we have to figure out how do we meet that need? And so we're really inspired about the products that you guys are doing and the things you're doing, and really appreciate your spending this morning teaching us all of these great things. So thank you. And for those of you who are following us, you know that we will post this webinar on our website probably next week. And we did have a request for slides, so we will post the slides right underneath the recording. And if you missed any of our other informative sessions, you can find them on our website at regionalopportunityinc.org. All right, everybody have a great day and a great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.